Tapakaya ca dharmasya sarvadharma swarupine Tapakaya ca dharmasya sarvadharma swarupine Avatara varishtaya Ramakrishna Yate Namah Asato ma sadgamaya Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya Asato ma sadgamaya Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya Mrityorma mritangamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us bow down to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God Incarnate. Let us pray to Him to lead us from unreal to the real, to lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. We have been discussing Sri Ramakrishna's teachings. He has said, discover your true self. You will achieve everything. But one has to do some practice in order to discover one's true self. And we have been talking about meditation and work. We must know how to maneuver all the faculties in us. If you know how to manipulate your faculties, then there won't be any conflict between meditation and work. We have discussed what is very important in our spiritual pursuit is meditative awareness. This topic we have been discussing since 2 classes. We have discussed many points. To maintain the spiritual fervor, to establish oneself in meditative awareness, you have to have very strong spiritual aspiration. So, spiritual aspiration plays very significant role in our life. Once we reach the meditative state, we have only to aspire intensely for God. What is the way to do that? Keep the will focused upon the divine. Will, everyone has the faculty of will. But most of us do not know how to use this extraordinary will. Keep the will focused upon the divine. Everything else that we need will be done by the divine. Our part is to focus the will upon the divine. The rest will be taken care of by the divine. This is one of the fundamental teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, which we had referred in the last class. Sri Ramakrishna has emphasized greatly the importance of aspiration in spiritual life. No doubt he said all paths lead to the same goal. But he did not merely teach that one could realize God through any path. What he meant was, he qualified this teaching with a class. One could realize God through any path, provided one had intense yearning for God. He once told a group of devotees, restlessness is the whole thing, whatever path you follow. Whether you are a Hindu, whether you are a Christian, whether you are a Mohammedan, whether you are this, whether you are that, that's immaterial. What is very important, very significant is that you should have vyakulata, intense restlessness, intense desire to see God. That's very important. That's what Sri Ramakrishna has stressed. He even further said, it doesn't matter if you take even a wrong path. Only you must be restless for God. God himself will put you on the right path. So God being the Supreme Self, his presence is felt in the center of one's inner self. So aspiration for God is only an expansion of the aspiration for one's own true self. It is called Atma Kama. So directing the will towards God really means directing it towards one's own self. Reversing the focus of the will upon its source, which is the inner self. This can't be done, however, all on a sudden. The will has to be detached progressively from its former moorings, and it has to be directed towards the inner self by stages. So the disciplines of karma yoga and meditation are mainly intended to fulfill these two functions respectively. So far we had discussed these points in the last class. Today I am going to discuss what are the stages in the operation of the will. It is very important to know that. Know the technique of handling yourself properly, then everything you will get. Knowing the technique is very essential. Behind every action, whatever you do, there are three kinds of sankalpa. They are one, karma phala sankalpa, meaning attachment of the will to the fruit of action. The second one, karma sankalpa, attachment of the will to action. Thirdly, kartavya sankalpa, attachment of the will to egoism. So what is the meaning of progressing yourself in karma yoga? It consists in giving up these three sankalpas, one after the other, which means detachment of the will in three stages. In the same way, meditation, according to Patanjali's scheme, passes through three similar stages. But unlike the case in Karma Yoga, the main effort in meditation is the focusing of the will. In the first stage, the will is focused upon the object, external or internal. This stage is called grahya sampatti. In the next stage, the will is concentrated on the meditative process. That is, on the mind stuff itself, without allowing to assume the form of an object. This formless meditation is called grahana sampatti. These are all very nicely described in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. I am just giving you only points. In a third stage, known as grahitra sampatti, the will is focused on the inner self itself. Thus, karma yoga and meditation represent respectively the negative and positive modes of operation of the will. Together they provide a single graduated scheme of spiritual progress. After attaining proficiency at the first stage, the spiritual aspirant should move on to the second and thence to the third. By following this course, he should acquire greater and greater maneuverability of the will, which is what the Gita means by its famous definition, yogaha karmasu kaushalam. What is yoga? It is dexterity in action. Dexterity. In the first stage of karma yoga, the aspirant tries to detach his will from the result of his action. And in the first stage of meditation, he tries to fix the will on an object. The will is not really free at this stage. It's only at the second stage, when it is being detached from work and is being fixed on the meditative process itself, that the will begins to be really free. At this stage, it becomes possible for us to attend to the duties of life, maintaining the meditative awareness constantly. As long as there is clinging to the fruit of action and to the object of meditation, it is impossible to carry on both work and meditation simultaneously. The acquisition of a pure, free and supple will, supported by an awakened luminous self remaining as a witness, that is what Lord Krishna calls it Buddhi Yoga. It becomes natural and spontaneous when Buddhi or spiritual heart awakens. It may be acquired through one's own self-effort. But Sri Krishna promises that God Himself gives this Buddhi Yoga to whom? To those who constantly think of Him and serve Him with love. Tesham saradayuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. That is the verse, Sanskrit verse. So Buddhi Yoga is a unified discipline in which there is no distinction between work and meditation. It was through Buddhi Yoga that the 17th century French mystic, Brother Lawrence, was able to practice the presence of God at all times, in all places. Those who have read his life will remember that it took him 40 years to attain to this state. There are 5 stages, 5 types of meditative awareness. 5 types of meditative awareness which we should know. When the meditative state of awareness becomes habitual, we make 2 important discoveries. One is that this state can be maintained under a variety of circumstances in everyday life, and so it is no longer necessary to set apart long hours to solitary contemplation. Secondly, maintaining meditative awareness constantly is much more difficult than sitting in meditation with closed eyes. But it transforms inner consciousness far more rapidly than the latter does. As a matter of fact, it represents a more advanced state. There comes a time in the life of every spiritual aspirant when he feels the need to enlarge the area of his awareness. He no longer feels satisfied with 2 or 3 hours of solitary meditation, but tries to extend meditative awareness to all situations of life at all times. There are 5 aspects of life which need special attention. One is the body, second the mind, third the world, fourth the work, and lastly the self. These 5 provide important means of enlarging our awareness. We shall go one by one. What is the awareness of the body? The simplest form of empirical awareness is the awareness of one's own body. What we see ordinarily, there is thoughtless abuse to which the digestive, genital and other organs of the body are mercilessly subjected to. Everyone is of course aware of his body, but the awareness is mostly of the wrong type, acquired through the unconscious. Many of the human illnesses, aggravation of the sex instinct and similar problems, they are all caused by the wrong type of body awareness. What is the right type of body awareness? Meditative awareness. The first step in the cultivation of meditative awareness of the body is to understand the language of the body. Yes, the body too has its own language and communicates with the world around it through it. By understanding this language, we can understand the needs and defects of the different organs and systems. The second step is to allow the body to function in its natural way by avoiding overindulgence, use of too much drugs and artificial stimulation, and by leading a regulated life. The next step is to extend awareness into the different parts and systems of the body. There is no need to control any organ by violent means. Through constant awareness, all the various functions of the body get regulated and harmonized in a natural way. When this happens, the body will start cooperating with us in our spiritual quest. What is the awareness of the mind? Awareness of the mind means awareness of thoughts. Every thought is a two-tier structure with a lower affective part and an upper abstract part. The affective part is an emotion or feeling like love, anger or fear. As has been said earlier, it is produced by the sprouting of karma bija. The abstract part is of the nature of the concept or idea and consists of a word and its corresponding image. It is produced by vasana. It is only the emotions and impulses which create agitation in mind and other problems. But they can operate only if the will gets connected to them. If the will does not lend its support to them, they will fade away. We usually try to detach will only when we sit down for meditation. The rest of the day, the will is surrendered to various emotional drives, which therefore continue to flourish. When by the constant practice of meditative awareness, these impulses lose the support of the will, they will gradually become weaker and die off. Ideas and images, which constitute the abstract part of thoughts, may still continue to rise in the mind, but without the support of the affective part, they cannot give us any trouble. Like clouds moving across the sky, or like travelers moving silently along a solitary road, words and forms cross the mind, disturbing nothing. You are not bothered about them. It should be noted in this context that ordinary meditation on mental images gives us only awareness of the mind. If you want to attain higher consciousness through meditation, these images should be regarded as inseparable from the self and should be meditated upon at the center of the inner self. That's why the spiritual aspirants are advised to meditate in the spiritual heart, symbolized as a lotus, which is the seat of the inner self. The next is awareness of work. Work is not merely movement of the body. It is a part of universal motion through which the self expresses itself. Work is meant to express oneself. Self-expression through work is known as creativity. True work is always creative. But with the exception of the work of some great artists and scientists, with that exception, most people are forced to do by economic necessity. The work is seldom creative. Uncreative, alienated work, they cause stress, they cause dissatisfaction, and they pose a problem. The main cause of stress in work is the conflict of desires and the responsibility of decision making. Making decisions calls for continual exercise of the will. Being enslaved by emotions, being enslaved by instincts, the will is not free in most people, and the exercise of such a will is bound to produce conflict, bound to produce strain. Apart from this, modern social life involves a good deal of repression and suppression of the basic urges of the individual. The next result of all these is the blocking of creativity and self-expression. The waking hours of an average member of modern society are mostly spent in a state of inhibition. The constant practice of meditative awareness removes the inhibitions and it frees the will. When the obstacles to creativity are removed, every work becomes a creative act. This means more channels for self-expression. The more the self expresses itself, the more it expands and the larger becomes its field of awareness. Every work will then become a spiritual process, and the difference between work and meditation will disappear. So, we must focus our attention upon freeing the will and focusing it on the inner self. To the extent you free the will from external things, to that extent you feel great peace and great joy. We shall continue the topic in the next class. Some more points I have to talk about. Page 528. Sri Ramakrishna became conscious of the outer world and began to converse with Narendra, Bhavanath and the other devotees. They were talking about the sadhaka. Bhavanath said smilingly, "What kind of man is he?" Sri Ramakrishna said, "He is a tamasic devotee." Bhavanath said, "He can certainly recite Sanskrit verses." Master said, "Once I said to a man about a sadhu, he is a Rajasic sadhu, why should one give him food and other presents?" At this, another sadhu taught me a lesson by saying to me, "Don't say that. There are 3 classes of holy men, Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic. Since that day, I have respected holy men of all classes." Narendra said smilingly, "What? Is it like the elephant god? All indeed are God?" Master said smilingly, "It is God himself who sports in the world as both Vidya and Avidya. Therefore I salute both. It is written in the Chandi, the Divine Mother is the good fortune of the blessed and the ill fortune of the unlucky." To Bhavanath, "Is that mentioned in the Vishnu Puran?" Bhavanath said smilingly, "I don't know, sir. The devotees from Konnagar didn't understand your samadhi and were about to leave the room." Master, "Who was it that asked them to remain?" Bhavanath said smilingly, "It was I." Master said, "My child, you are equally good in bringing people here and in driving them away." The conversation turned to the argument that Narendra had with the musician from Konnagar. Mukherjee said, "Narendra did not spare him." Master said, "That's right. One needs such grit. This is called the influence of tamas on sattva. Must a man listen to everything another man says? Should one say to a prostitute, 'All right, you may do whatever you like'? Must one listen to her?" At one time, Radha was picked. A friend said, "Her ego has been roused." Brinde, another friend, said, "Who is this ego? Whose is this ego? Her ego belongs to Krishna alone. She is proud in the pride of Krishna." The conversation turned to the glory of God's name. Bhavanath said, "I feel such relief while chanting the name of Hari." Master said, "He who relieves us of sin is Hari. He relieves us of our 3 afflictions in the world." Chaitanya preached the glory of Hari's name, so it must be good. You see, he was such a great scholar and an incarnation too. Since you preached that name, it must be good. Smiling, he said, once some peasants were invited to a feast. They were asked if they would eat a preparation of hog plum. They answered, "You may give it to us if the gentlemen have eaten it. If they enjoyed it, then it must be good." All laugh. To the Mukherjee brothers, Sri Ramakrishna said, "I should like to visit Shivanath. I won't have to hire a carriage if you take me in yours." Mukherjee said, "All right, sir, we shall set a day." Master said to the devotees, "Do you think the Brahmos will like me? They criticize those who believe in God with form." Mahendra Mukherjee wanted to go on a pilgrimage. He told Sri Ramakrishna so. Master said smilingly, "How is that? Do you want to go when the sprout of divine love has hardly come up? First comes the sprout, then the tree, then the fruit. We are so happy to have you here to talk to." It was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Sri Ramakrishna left his room. The devotees were walking in the garden. Many of them were about to leave. The master was conversing with Hazra on the north veranda. They were talking of Narendra's frequent visits to Ananda, the eldest son of the Guhas. Hazra said, "I hear that Ananda is now practicing austerity. He lives on very little food and eats rice once every 4 days. Master said, "Is that so? Who knows? One may realize God even by means of a religious garb." Hazra said, Narendra sang the Agamani. Master said eagerly, "How did he sing it?" Kishori stood close by. The master said to him, "Are you well?" A little later, the master was standing on the west porch. Since it was autumn, he had put on a flannel shirt dyed with ochre. He asked Narendra, "Is it true that you sang the Agamani?" Accompanied by Narendra and M, Sri Ramakrishna walked to the embankment of the Ganges. Narendra sang the Agamani. "Tell me, my Uma, how have you fared alone in the stranger's house? People speak so much ill of us. Alas, I die of shame. My son-in-law smears his body with ashes from the funeral pyre and roams about in great delight. You too, along with him, cover with ash your golden skin. He begs the food that he eats. How can I bear it, being your mother? This time, when he returns to claim you, I shall say to him, my daughter Uma is not at home." We shall stop here. So once you develop meditative awareness, then there won't be any conflict between work and meditation. Meditative awareness is very important. That is possible only when you have strong spiritual aspiration. Spiritual aspiration is always to be thought of intensely. The secret of success is spiritual aspiration. That leads you towards God. The more you become meditative, aware, the more you become free from the problems that bother you. think of the divine idea and maintain that attitude, handle all your faculties carefully, with skill. Be conscious of what you have been doing. This constant awareness finally brings you very good result. That's the conclusion. Any questions? Karma phala. Karma phala, karma sankalpa. Karma phala means the fruit of action. And the other one is karma sankalpa. Yeah. Yeah. Kartavya sankalpa.
What does it mean? How you detach yourself from?
So what happens when our mind is attached to the fruits of action? That way your will is not set free. You will not be able to carry on the work with maximum efficiency if your mind is constantly thinking of the result. For example, if you are constantly bothering about the result, that botheration is there because your mind is inclining towards the result. On the other hand, take care of the plant, water it nicely, be happy that the plant is living quite well, healthy and good. That way feel more and more joy. Every day you see the plant, every day you feel more joy. Oh, it's going nicely. It's going wonderfully well. It is giving joy, it is giving peace. So, you are enjoying the experience of joyfulness. Then when it begins to give flower, your joy is increased 100-fold. Then when it begins to give fruit, it becomes 1,000-fold. But here in this stage, you are not bothered because you are not every day being agitated by the result, by the final fruit of the action, but you are enjoying the every stage of the action what you have been doing. Do it properly, nicely, so the plant is free from weeds and bugs, etc. That's the meaning of telling, do the work properly, efficiently, with concentration and dedication. That's the point. Karma sankalpa means attachment of the will to action. Generally what happens, we are prompted by certain actions because we want to do them, we like it. So the question of likes and dislikes came in the forefront. We are doing certain action because you are attached to that. The action is being done on account of the attachment. Attachment always brings stress. For example, suppose you go and bring a pet. What prompted you to bring the pet? You wanted it. You desired intensely to have a pet in your home. The moment you brought it, it led to a kind of attachment towards the pet. You begin to feel, you become as if you are possessed. And your feeling towards the pet becomes more and more intense. That way your mind is dragged towards that. That means your mind is subject to constant stress on account of the attachment to the action. But on the other hand, if you are doing some actions just not with any emotional aspect, only for the sake of, for the love of God, so in that state of tranquility, you will be able to do work more nicely, and that strengthens your will also. You will be able to maintain that meditative awareness. You feel joy to do work because you feel the presence of the divine everywhere. With that attitude you work, so that keeps all your emotions under control. That's the meaning of attachment of the will to action. All these three operate behind every action what we do. The third one is kartavya sankalpa. It means the attachment of the will to egoism. That's the point. The more and more you do work, there is every tendency that you become more egoistic. The more egoistic you become, the more dangerous it is towards your spiritual achievement. Because the egoism leads to very unpleasant consequences. You will not be able to move towards knowing the truth. On the other hand, you will be just prevented from going forward in your spiritual journey. So when you have to practice karma yoga, you have to be free from all these three kinds of sankalpas. You are doing them, at the same time you are not stained by them. Do them for the love of God. When you do it properly, you may get the result. That's a different issue. You are doing it for the sake of service to God. In that way, when you do, you will be able to do it properly also. Otherwise, emotions and stresses make you miserable. You will not be able to do the work properly, and you may do the work in a very absent-minded way. Then when you do your work in an absent-minded way, that very moment it loses the yoga aspect. It becomes mere work, not karma yoga, but only karma. That means if you do only karma, it is followed by stress and strain. All the reactions will be there. If you are doing as karma yoga, you are free from all stress and strain. So that is the meaning of all these three which I explained. Any more? Yeah, do you want to ask? Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to get a clearer understanding of what is the fruit of action. What does that mean? I've seen that in the Bhagavad Gita, and I want to know what it means.
Because you want the result. The fruit of action means, suppose you do a certain thing, you are concerned about the remuneration. I am doing job for 1 hour. How much finance? How much money I get? Is it only $5? I work 5 hours. They give only $5. That man gets $50 but I get only $5. You get agitated. So that means your work is the priority is for the result, not for the work. Whatever work you do, accordingly the result will come. So, what is needed is show your efficiency in doing the work. That way, feel more and more joy in doing the work properly. Then you will be raising yourself, your standard of work also. You will be raising and you become more efficient in your doing the work and do it nicely. Then people like you more. They give you more responsible job and you will get responsible benefit also along with that. But simply craving for the benefits than actually performing the work properly, that's bad. That's the meaning of that karma phala. Yeah. We shall stop.